you don't shut your mouth, I'ma shut it for you, punk!
Hello. We are once again back with all the Spider-Verse stuff. We are now on to the Hobie video. First of all, this video is going to be very long because we have to tackle a lot more than we did in the Miles, Pivotar, and Gwen videos. Gwen and Miles were more focused on their stories and how it affected the whole narrative of the movie itself. Pivotar was talking more about the impact of British Imperial rule and the fact that he was just, like, a really fun character. But Hobie Brown? Man, we have so much to cover, so sorry in advance about how long this video is going to be. We'll have to cover punk culture and that history, then we have to discuss the universe from which he comes from, and then we have to cover his intro and his part in the movie, also spoilers. I'm still gonna say this for every video because in all honesty, I know some people just click on videos unaware that other things are going to be brought up, but spoilers ahead, because I don't want to hear about how I ruined it for other people. So this is going to be a long video. Let's deep dive into punk culture. Like I said, the history of the punk subculture involves the history of punk rock, the history of various punk ideologies, punk fashion, punk visual art, punk literature, dance, and punk film, and that punk you knew in middle school. Yes, that punk in middle school was probably not punk, but we're gonna go with it. Since emerging in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia in the mid-1970s, the punk subculture has spread around the globe and evolved into a number of different forms. The history of punk plays an important part in the history of subculture in the 20th century. And before you say, well, how? Steampunk, cyberpunk, diesel punk, like that's all technically part of punk culture. And also, a number of philosophical and artistic movements were influences on and precursors to the punk movement. The most overt is anarchism, especially its artistic inceptions. Anarchism is a political philosophy and movement that is skeptical of all justifications of authority and seeks to abolish the institutions it claims maintains unnecessary coercion and hierarchy, typically including the United States, the British Crown, and capitalism. Anarchism advocates for the replacement of the state with stateless societies and voluntary free associations. As a historically left-wing movement, this reading of anarchism is placed on the farthest left of the political spectrum, usually described as the libertarian wing of the socialist movement, or libertarian socialism. But I want to make something clear, because while writing this script, my youngest nieces and nephews were under the impression that the whole world would be like Mad Max Fury Road, and honesty, none of us like being gross for longer than a couple of days, so they don't much like the idea of a world where water is so restricted that they have to stink for more than 2 or 3 days. Which, you know what, I understand. But I had to explain to them that the movie was like the most extreme version of anarchy, but the idea itself is actually not, somehow. Let me explain. Humans have lived in societies without formal hierarchies long before the establishment of states, realms, or empires. With the rise of organized hierarchical bodies, skepticism towards authority also rose. Basically, it sounded like a good idea until Dave in the back row was like, but why? And then all of us also started to be like, yeah, why is that? Although traces of anarchism ideas are found all throughout history, modern anarchism emerged from the Enlightenment during the later half of the 19th and the first decades of the 20th centuries, respectively. The anarchist movement flourished in most parts of the world and had a significant role in worker struggles for emancipation. Various anarchist schools of thought formed during this period. Anarchists have taken part in several revolutions, most notably in the Paris Commune, the Russian Civil War, and the Spanish Civil War, whose end marked, like, the beginning of the end of the classical era of anarchism. In the last decade of the 20th and into the 21st centuries, however, the anarchist movement has been resurgent once more, growing in popularity and influence with anti-capitalist, anti-war, and anti-globalization movements, which is not bad. This does not mean you want to burn the world down and go live your Mad Max Fury Road fantasy. It just means that the system in place benefits only some, but not all. And the unfairness of it all is what they take major offense to. They take offense to how the system is being run, and they think, honestly, that it's whack and it needs to change. Which, you know what, that's fair. Various writers, books, and literary movements were important to the foundation of the punk subculture. Like the poet Arthur Rimbaud provided the basis of Richard Hell's attitude, fashion, and hairstyles. Charles Dickens, as much as I dislike his works because it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. You need to pick a lane, my dude. I understand you're being paid by the word, but wrap it up, I'm getting bored. Charles Dickens' working-class politics and unromantic depictions of the disenfranchised street youth influenced British punk in a number of ways. Malcolm McLaren described the Sex Pistols as, like, Dickenisms, because they took a lot of their stuff in their music from Charles Dickens, which I didn't know, and I didn't even know there was a band called the Sex Pistols, so you learn something new every day while you're writing scripts. But punk was influenced by the Beat Generation, especially Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, and William S. Burroughs. Like, yeah, no, that's right, I said that word, I said those names right. Perhaps the first example of punk literature was actually The Basketball Diaries, who was written by Jim Carroll. Also, George Orwell's dystopian novel, 1984, might have inspired much of punk's distrust for the government. In his autobiography, No Dogs, No Blacks, No Irish, John Lyndon remembers the influence that film version of A Clockwork Orange had on his own style. Basically, everybody who is talking about the fact that, hey, these systems are whack, somehow influences everybody else in their own way. And it's not the fact that you want the world to burn down that is punk. It is the fact that you want to stand up and say, this doesn't seem right and it doesn't work for everybody. We need to change the system so it does work for everybody. Which is a novel idea. It really is. It's the reason why in the cyberpunk universes, if you play through all of the stuff and listen to it, cyberpunk is still part of the punk genre, is because the wealthy elite are using their own version of being able to turn into robots and replacing themselves with cybernetic parts to influence the lower classes who are not as influential. Because while they are able to pay for all the upgrades, updates, and like antivirus that goes with all of their stuff, the lower classes get basically the hand-me-downs that are not good at all and have a really high rate of mortality, but they are making it work is because it's this or nothing, because the whole world is now digital. Also, there's a lot more on it, and I'm not gonna even pretend to, like, think about it too much, because, you know, it's not that kind of a video. I already did a cyberpunk video, and I'm not gonna, like, do more, but whatever. Anyway, this is important, because in January 2015, Hobie Brown came onto the scene. So, it's really wild is that Hobie Brown is a relatively newer addition to the Spider-Man casting crew, but he is the best. He was created by a writer named Dan Slott, and his art was done by Olivier Copelet, with the punk mindset and punk style right out of the gate. During the Spider-Verse storyline, the Earth-138 version of Spider-Man is revealed to be Hobart Brown, which I'm gonna let you know right now. I know that is like a legal first name, but nah, he's Hobie. Like for the rest of this, legal first name, Hobart. We do not use government names here. Hobie. Good. Originally operating as Spider-Punk, he's technically a homeless teenager who was transformed by a spider that was irradiated as part of President Norman Osborn's toxic waste dumping, which seems to be so often in superhero franchises, like there's just toxic waste that's just being dumped. First of all, I feel like the comic book universe needs like a really good OSHA violation like seminar. I really do. But that's neither here nor there. Hobie becomes like the punk rock inspired Spider-Man, leading the downtrodden people of New York against Osborn's Venom troops. Venom as a V-E-N-O-M acronym, not just the word Venom. Just FYI. Spider-Punk managed to kill Osborn during a riot by bashing his head in with his guitar. I'm not gonna lie, there is something very satisfying about taking a heavy object and just bonking the shit out of something. Especially when it goes pop. But I feel like that's a totally different kind of a video, and we're not gonna really be stuck on it. That's what he does, moving on. His universe, as he says in the movie, is overrun with fascist.
That is when I'm not playing shows, antagonizing fascists, staging unpermitted political action / performing art pieces.
Now here's where some people might want to debate, and I'll let you guys go and at the comments and like fight each other into the pit, because I'm not a political channel and I won't take a stab at it. Like, whether or not that's considered fascism or not, like, go into the comments and go play with each other. I'm not going to touch it, because I refuse to. Because it it's not something I am well versed in, and I'm not going to try and dip my toe into a political spectrum that I have no reason being in. Moving on. So the universe he comes from is punk and polish and political and positively wonderful as far as storytelling goes. Now we have to talk about Hobie Brown himself, which even Hobie Brown doesn't like to talk about himself. But I'll talk about him because he's the most delightful out of all the spider people. He's actually voiced by Daniel Kaluuya. Yeah, that guy. This version is a Briton who, like Kaluuya, comes from Camden. Camden is like, I'll just put up a map right here, just Camden, like this. And Camden Polygon noted a positively general consensus around Spider-Punk as one of the characters in the film that's been blowing everyone's minds with just how wild he looks. And the character has been described as, quote, the most entertaining Spider-Man variant we meet in the film, as well as one of the coolest. Arian Arden of Digital Spy saw the introduction of Spider-Punk into Miles Morales' story as positive black British representation. Quote, his character's design is jagged around the edges and consistently shifting, while his personality swings between the classical Cockney sensibility and immeasurable black British street swagger. He's simply the coolest Spider-Man in Across the Spider-Verse, and perhaps even more refreshingly, he knows it and revels in it. Which I'm going to, tangent right here from my script. This is true, and I need to really put this in. If you go across the ocean and talk to anybody that's lived overseas, there is no black and white and Asian, it is actually just where you're from. If you tell a black man you're black while he's in England, he'll look at you weird and go, no, I'm from Camden, I'm from Soho. National pride is weird over there. Not because they're not, proud of where they're from, but they dislike when people try to, really dumb down what they are to the point of its only color. They get aggravated about it because I was hanging out with friends while I was in Europe, and we went up to Scotland, as you do when you're in the Isles. You go up to Scotland for shits and giggles because you do, and I didn't know that one of my mates had married this lovely woman, and I didn't know that he had married her. And the first time I was talking to her, I straight up said, oh, you're one of them English lasses. And she looked at me, and I thought she was gonna whack me, just straight across the face with a frying pan. And she told me, I know you're from America, but I'm not English, you fucking cunt. I'm Scottish. And I couldn't help it. I felt like such an idiot. I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were from England, because of how she was talking. And she was like, nah. She's like, I'm not from England. She's like, I went to England to study because of all the colleges, but I'm from Scotland. I'm a Scottish lass. And the reason why this is hilarious is because my mate is black, and his wife was Asian. I didn't even think about it when I said she's English. I just thought that's where she's from because of how she was talking to me. And I realized I've slipped into my accent because I lived there for so fucking long. And now I don't think I can get out of it. I'm sorry. I'm gonna try. Okay. I realized something. Because I'm so world traveled, I sometimes slip into the accents of where I've been, not because I don't like my American accent, but because if you live somewhere long enough, you start to talk like where you're from, unintentionally coloring your speech, and you can slip right back into it because you were doing it so long that it's not even really a thought. Okay, we're gonna go back to the script now. I'm gonna keep this in. I'm not even gonna edit it out because I think it's the funniest shit. But, where was I? Right. Hobie Brown is considered the coolest Spider-Person, which is the best way we can introduce him. He comes in swinging and steals the movie from then out because Hobie Brown doesn't believe in, Hobie Brown doesn't really believe in anything.
And I don't believe in consistency.
Because he's a punk. But that's neither here nor there. Hobie Brown knows what Gwen won't tell Miles, and as we covered in 2 other videos, Hobie knows this, and Hobie has been smart enough to be making his own watch behind Miguel O'Hara's back, because he already knows something's not right. Other than the fact that he's a punk and doesn't believe in the institutionalized, thing of, somebody on top, everybody else does what they say, it already sounds sketchy, so he doesn't want to believe in it. And he makes enough watches for Gwen and Miles. Even though it's only implied to be for Miles, and we haven't seen that yet because the new movie hasn't come out, I'm still going to put that in. That's a personal theory. Because Hobie comes from a universe where unquestioning loyalty is not a good thing when the loyalty is based on, just trust me, I have seen this happen. Like, what's your sources? My sources, I made it the fuck up. Like, calm down, Miguel. People have a right to question everything. Trust me, we will get to Miguel here soon. But Hobie saw the writing on the wall and tried his best to get Miles to follow him and come hang out and forget about the rest of it, because he already knew what was going to happen before it even happened. But Miles goes, and Hobie is ready to help him. In fact, he already did.
Bit of advice. Use the palm, not just your fingers.
Like I said in the Miles video, or I think I thought I said, use your hands. When Miles is being chased, Hobie says, nah, and dips. But not before he drops off a gift for Gwen, which I did mention in her video, to set up the next movie. Hobie Brown is amazing, and I want to see him in the next movie so bad. So please, people who made the movie, even though it's already probably made, take notes, because it's how you write a punk. And keep that as, like, the aesthetic, please, I beg of you. But yeah, Hobie Brown, best character, 10 out of 10, would recommend. Keep him as is. Dear people who want to write punks, Hobie Brown, he is your poster child. He is the gold standards. Please go for him. Thank you, love you, bye. Have a good rest of your day. Love you, bye.
I don't follow orders, neither does he.